the less you rely on people and the less you rely on quote unquote tribal knowledge, and the more you can lean on the system itself, then that's when you can start to have these huge productivity gains, and like you can really start to trust the automation.
And the people can, or the users can focus on different problems. So like spending time on talking to the clients instead, solving problems for the clients instead of like doing all these repetitive tasks in the background. So it is a bit scary when we come along and try to automate things and the users sit there like, what am I going to do? You can just do other stuff that actually add value to your clients. I'm going to be made redundant. No. You can add value somewhere else.
I haven't consulted for a company where people are made redundant. It's just that they can either take on more or they take on different tasks, or the company is able to grow with the same resources. And so that's always the ideal situation. And the situation that happens, this is the same problem with AI, is because people say AI is going to make jobs obsolete. But I think that if you can leverage it, then rising tide lifts everyone, and that more capacity is always good. I think we all think that project-based learning is kind of the way to go, because you don't quite learn until you're on the project. I mean, people want to treat it very academically, like you watch all these courses and you take all these notes, and now I've learned Grasshopper. But I really feel like the work starts when you make a script and fail and then have to fix it. I think that's the first true test of who's going to stick around with it and really develop their skills.
Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Design Logic podcast. This is a conversation I had with Oskar Scherdin back in September, who runs his own consultancy automating workflows in Rhino and Grasshopper. He has a background in BIM implementation, structural engineering, and software sales, which gives him a unique lens to look at these sorts of problems. This was recorded in a different context when I was trying to start up my own podcast, so the angle is a little more on design, technology, business, entrepreneurship, rather than the topics of design that we usually focus on this podcast. So if you're into software automation, or you follow my content on LinkedIn, which is Grasshopper and software manipulation, then this will be the episode for you. Thanks and enjoy the podcast.
Today I have Oskar Scherdin here on with me. He does computational design, a lot of the same work I do in the same space, and I just thought it'd be interesting to have him on to chat about our shared interest, our work, the cool projects he's working on, why he's doing this, and kind of his career progression in the space. So welcome, Oskar.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
I guess I'll open it up by asking, what drew you into computational design? Like, why is this like an area of work that you enjoy?
I think I'm just lazy by nature and I just want to automate everything.
Yeah.
I don't like doing repetitive stuff. So I think that's always been in my, mindset. And so when I found out Grasshopper was a thing, or Grasshopper and Rhino, it sort of drew me in that way. Like I realized I could just automate a lot of my boring tasks.
Yeah, I mean, I have a similar story because I was there sitting at an architectural design firm doing, tedious work day in and day out. They had me drawing elevations for a bathroom every day for about 2 months. And imagine like a urinal moves or what are the partitions moves, and we have to scrap the whole thing, find all the views and sections in AutoCAD and redraw them. So that was enough to drive me crazy just 2 months into my professional career. And it sounds like it was a similar story for you. But
especially in the construction space, revisions happens all the time. So you just want to have one click revision sort of set up.
Yeah.
Having to redo everything from scratch every time.
Yeah. I mean, BIM is obviously the first logical step in this direction because you have a single model, which is the source of truth. And then you take views off of that. And so, if a window moves, then everything moves in the drawing sets. But then after that, if you want to handle revisions more quickly, setting it up in a computational system, obviously you and I know that that's the best way a lot of time because designs can get reconfigured. Everything adapts depending on the constraints and the system that you've built around your design.
They always get reconfigured.
They always do.
Yeah, it's a fact.
Yeah. It's not if, it's when and how. It's like how big can you build the system, and how easy can we make it to fix things later.
And I guess one of the things as well, like curiosity of how much can you automate, and like, I can take this and then build on that for the next project, and make it sort of span multiple things.
Yeah, you start to like
Uh,
build a library, right? Like you have your user objects and your little clusters that you drop in. And then
yeah, yeah,
after you see a problem a few times, obviously you know how to tackle it. So it really builds on itself, not just like in the project, but like over your career, I think.
yeah, for sure.
What was the first role that you had that was like, oh man, I really want to automate this because I don't want to be doing this. I'm too lazy to do this. What was the problem?
I think it's like my background as a structural engineer, coming from Scandinavian countries. I used a lot of Tekla structures in the beginning, and in there they have something called custom components. So, which is like you build in parametric design, but within a very constrained and not so flexible like system. But that's where I started. You can like implement if statements, lookup tables, and this whole thing. So it's sort of that's where it all started for me because I could automate a lot of the things. And then when I discovered Grasshopper, I can take my components and put that into a larger system and like, exponentially add to my yeah, automation, I guess.
Yeah, how did you discover Grasshopper from Tekla?
Good question. I can't really remember. I was working at I was sort of working on the other side of the fence for a while when I moved to Australia, selling and supporting Tekla structures. And then when the Grasshopper link came out for Tekla, that's when I started fiddling around with that.
Mhm.
And then I think I saw the potential there, but didn't have time quite yet. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, eventually I got to play with that more and learn more as time progressed. And yeah, just fell in love with it, I guess. It just
Yeah.
ticks all the boxes for me personally.
Yeah, building templates and automating things. I mean, I'm the same way. So, um, I hit a wall just basically with 3D methods, and then I started,
Mm.
reaching and looking and seeing if there was an easier way to do things. And then it kind of fell into my lap. So it kind of sounds like you were curious, you wanted to automate things, um, and you became aware of Grasshopper and just tried to start integrating that with what you were doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the fact that I can integrate with any other software as well, that open up a
Mm.
lot of other doors. So
Yeah.
I think that was the most amazing thing. It's like, oh, I can take my spreadsheet over here, and I can build I can read in my DWG format, and do all these amazing things in the background, and also get other outputs in the background that um you know that just sort of happens when you do your task that you meant to do. It can also produce a lot of byproducts like
Yeah.
energy effect, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. The walls kind of start to break down between programs, which is not the way that,
Mm.
we're like wired to think. Because Windows like partitions each of the programs, but the file types can talk to each other, and sometimes you can even call one from the other. So that was kind of a revelation for me also.
Yeah, and I guess the construction industry in a nutshell is it's a bit backwards as well, because it's always like we do all these good things in like a container, and then we send a PDF out from that and then to the next guy, and then we redo it again instead of
No.
like sharing the intelligent data between each sort of step. So yeah, that's quite cool.
Yeah. Have you ever had to trace a drawing from a PDF? That's always infuriating for me because I'm like, I know this file exists somewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, it's headache, a lot of headaches, PDFs, and poor poor exports from like to DWG files that are not properly aligned or whatever it might be. It's just a lot of frustration.
Yeah. So what's one of the first projects that you can remember kind of like tying all this together?
I think I just started automating small tasks for clients of mine, to be honest, and then it sort of grew from there. So when I started my own business, it was mostly just helping out, setting up Tekla structures and automating stuff in there. And then I realized I could tie in Grasshopper more and more, and it went from like 95% Tekla to 98% Grasshopper within my business.
Okay.
And then tying in other CAD softwares as well, like ArchiCAD or Revit or whatever it might be.
So when you started your business, you were kind of thinking that you'd be using Tekla more than you thought that would be your bread and butter, and it sounds like you started pivoting, I guess.
Yeah. I think I wanted to go towards Grasshopper. I think that was my goal, and it worked out better than I thought. So
Oh,
it
yeah.
was like, I want to do 50-50, and then ended up being only that, which I'm happy with. So that's good.
That's great. Why do you think that is? Is it because it's so much more capable?
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Like, we still need the other softwares, but eliminating all the inputs, like the manual inputs, that's where Grasshopper comes in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Reading and interpreting and you can even do like all the quality control stuff as well. So build in all of that, like the QA stuff.
Okay.
So you don't have to sit there and check your input. It could just like flag straight away this input that your provider is failing in XYZ, whatever it might be.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like building a larger structure. You can validate inputs and outputs, and that sounds like a good system that you've gotten set up over there. So how long have you been in business for yourself, like working for your clients on these kinds of projects?
Like 5.5 years, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, we're coming up to 5.5, I'd say. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, so was that really the start of when you were pursuing Grasshopper really seriously at the start of opening your business?
Yeah, I think I skilled up before I started. So I was interested in Grasshopper before I went on my own. And I did like a few online courses. I think I did Think Parametric, if you've seen that website. They have a couple of good ones, especially for the AEC industry. So that's when I learned like the basics, but it's more, you just have to dive in there and try and learn the hard way. I think that's the best way of learning. And then I sort of said yes to a lot of things that I didn't really know how to solve, but I sort of figured it out as I went.
Yeah.
That's also the best way of learning. So saying yes to something and then being under the pump and just, it is what it is. Solve it.
Yeah, I think that's the best way. I mean, everybody I talk to, I think we all think that project-based learning is kind of the way to go because you don't quite learn until you're on the project. I mean, people want to treat it very academically, like you like watch all these courses and you take all these notes and now I've learned Grasshopper. But I really feel like the work starts when you make a script and fail and then have to, fix it. I feel like that's when all of the, naivete or whatever it's called, it just like goes away because it seems easy. Like you see just people like hooking all this stuff up. But when your data tree doesn't work and you like, are getting something crazy and you don't know how to validate it, that's when I think the serious people are kind of separated from the hobbyists. But I don't want to gatekeep like that. But I'm just saying that I think that's the first true test of who's going to stick around with it and really develop their skills.
Yeah. Like all the training material you get are fine, but if you don't apply it, like you say, then it's no good because you really need real world like scenarios to test your skills or to repeat them until you actually learn them.
Yeah,
which is the same with anything, I guess. It doesn't only apply to parametric design, but yeah, once you apply them and you realize your mistakes, I'm like, oh, okay, I shouldn't do it this way. I need to do it that way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's how we learn is through iteration, right? Failure.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good. Like there's a good community out there, so it's easy to jump on like the McNeil forum and shoot a few questions. That's really helped me in the beginning. So I was just saying to you before, I'm trying to be a part of the forum a bit, just jump in and answer a few questions every now and then to help out others as well. They are in the beginning of their journey.
Yeah, just trying to give back in a sense, because I think we see ourselves in a lot of people who are earlier on in the journey, and a lot of those problems that we know like the back of our hands now, like what the solution is, and people still asking those basic questions. So it's nice to like help people along the way, kind of like push the ball up the hill.
But it's interesting. Like we know a solution to the same problem uh, as I know a solution, but our solutions are probably not the same.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So that's why these conversations or like on LinkedIn is very interesting. It's like, oh, I never thought about it that way. I'm like, oh, that way might be faster, especially if you have a lot of data coming through, or my way might be faster, depending whatever
Yeah.
inputs. Yeah. So always you can always solve things in 10 different ways as usual. But
Yeah, I love watching everyone solve problems in different ways because, since I started posting on LinkedIn, I've learned a lot about even like basic topics and, the thing about project-based learning, which maybe I swing too far in that direction because as soon as I get enough, I ditch all the tutorials and the documentation and all that stuff. But so there's like holes that you miss along the way, and like simple concepts that I didn't like pick up. So just like seeing like the beginner tips, and I'm like, actually, I didn't know that one. So that's why people like Chris and TiVo and you on the forums, like it's really valuable.
yeah, it's nice to pick up those like simple, like basic nuggets as well. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that short command. I'm like, that's very useful. Or like, what's that command? I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I mean, I just learned about make principal. Do you know that one? You right click on one of the inputs on a component and you make it the principal input. And what that does is that like locks the data tree structure for your output. And I was like, that would have been cool because then I don't have to finagle with all the trees on the front end of it.
Yeah.
But
I found that works sometimes.
oh really? Yeah,
does not always, but yeah, it's a good idea.
yeah. You
I like it as well.
some of these tricks, you think they're cool, and then you use them for a while, and then you realize, okay, they're not as good in these scenarios. But it's a new one for me, so I haven't found the problems with it yet. But it's good to hear that you, um, it's a neat trick, but doesn't always work as intended.
Like your expertise is a bit more on leaning towards the programming side. Is that correct as well?
Yeah, I try to talk about that a little more because it seems like, for one, that's kind of the edge of my understanding. So I also like using LinkedIn as a way to test my knowledge. So if I learn something and distill it enough to be able to teach it, then I understand it, and then I know all the pros and cons and can like stand on my argument. But for me, it's really productive to do that on the edge of what you know, because one, you're learning while you're teaching, and then when you teach it, other people are going to tell you that you're wrong, and these are the reasons why you're wrong, and then you learn more. But the only problem with that is, the thicker skin, because I mean, I've done whole write-ups about stuff, and then someone is like, yeah, this like 20 component thing that you built is actually just in the default Grasshopper settings, and I was like, okay. So
but it's good. That's a good way of learning.
Yeah, that's true. And then like the programming stuff too. This happened with the Python overloads. I had like some weird strong box solution, and then other people pointed out that it was much simpler than I had made it. But yeah, so I'm trying to post more about programming because that's kind of where I'm still learning and where I think I could, learn by teaching. So yeah,
that's definitely an area that I'm lacking, but I find it very satisfying solving those problems.
Yeah.
Because I'm not as good at it. So especially if I have a solution that requires a like external plugin, and I don't want like. I always try to solve the problems with all the native components to the extent that I can, but sometimes I have to go there by download an extra plugin or something. But it's way better if I can solve it with either native components or with a C# or Python plugin. I prefer this C sharp, but I know you're a Python fan.
I am a Python fan. I think it's a little faster for me to write at the moment, and it's just if it's easier for me to write, then I can get more done. But yeah, the point about plugins, and I think early when I was learning for the past couple of years, I would just amass all these plugins, and now I'm like on the other side of the hill where I'm like, okay, how many of these can I uninstall? Like, what are all the alternatives to all these like different ones that I've like have a crutch on?
Yeah, especially if you're providing a solution to a client, you don't want to ask them to install like this 50 extra plugins. It's like, I want to have this and that works. And then you're in control of everything, especially if, we update to another new version of Rhino and they don't update the plugins.
Yeah, I've had to basically make a glossary of all the 12 plugins and the version numbers that you need to download. And I'm trying, to not do that again with another delivery because it's proven to be difficult whenever like a new member of like a design team gets ramped on or an update happens to something. And people get different bugs which are hard to reproduce.
I think it's getting easier these days though with the new, like you can install everything from the package manager within Rhino, which didn't always work as well in the past. But these days seem to be working flawlessly, to be honest. So that's good.
Yeah, that's really good. I still have everyone on old versions of the plugins, so I have to tell them go find 27.1.2. But
okay, yeah.
I should really bring it all up to date and make sure it works and just say like, okay, stay up to date. So just switching gears a little bit, how have you enjoyed running your own company as opposed to working for other companies? Like, is this something that you had to do for yourself? And like, how has that experience been for you the last 5 years?
I went from a role where I had a team of people to just being solo pretty much now.
Yeah.
Which have been quite nice because I can really focus on the things that I do, and I think my strong side is problem solving anyway.
Yeah, okay.
And so it's taken a burden off my head not having to deal with managing people.
Yeah.
But I do like the flexibility and time management side of things, especially having like a family. I can attend to them when I want and need to, and then work whichever hours I want. And I'm sitting in in the forest on the Sunshine Coast of Eastern Australia, and I work with clients in Europe or US. It doesn't really matter when or where I am. So that's good. I do like that part.
That's great to hear. You can work where you want. You can be around the family. Those are all good things. And you get more of that deep work project time rather than managing people, which everyone has their strong suits and likes and dislikes, but it seems like you settled into what you like.
I do miss the banter around in the office sort of thing. So
yeah,
these sort of conversations is quite nice.
Yeah, that's good.
It's not the same, but
I'm the same way. I kind of need a mix because I think I'm a little extroverted by nature. So I'm like, I need conversations, interaction, but I also really value my project time. So if I can end up settling into some split where in the morning I have that time and then later I manage a team, that would probably be my 5-year goal, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's way easier because when I'm in the zone solving problems or whatever it might be, it's nice not having any distractions. I can just continue in that and be very efficient for whatever many hours.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting stuff done. Whereas otherwise I get interrupted, get phone calls and what have you. Now I can just shut everything off and really power through some problems, which is very satisfying.
Yeah, I mean, do you know the concept of I'm sure you do, everyone does, flow and deep work and just being able to settle into that without having those distractions, those email pings, text messages, emergencies.
Yep.
Yeah. So it sounds like
it definitely helps.
Yeah, that time is really valuable. For people like us who like, problem solving, this is why we got into it, right?
Yeah, for sure. 100%. That's what I thrive on.
Yeah. Yeah, same. Um, so are there any interesting projects you're working on today or in your world at the moment?
I have like a big project, which is several years ongoing. It's for a precast company over in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
They're building stairs. So within Tekla, so all the users seeing this is like, okay, so I'll try to
Yeah.
explain. So within Tekla, they're producing the 3D model of a stair with reinforcement and like casting items and uh, shop drawing of everything,
Mm-hmm.
and like they can then produce an IFC. But they're using Rhino inside Tekla,
Okay.
so it's like a component and a Tekla interface for all the users, so they don't really interact with Rhino in that sense or
Okay.
Grasshopper,
Yeah.
even though it's a script. So I can set up like the UI for them, and it actually does a lot of things. So it you set up the load combination or load case and like exposure classes and what have you, and it actually runs an analysis in the background, figures out the thickness of the stair, how much reinforcement, what type of like casting item for the lifters, and everything is being optimized, and like dimension points are being placed for the drawing so they can be easily automated as well.
Yeah.
And then also in the background, it's producing like stepping reports and like for the terrazzo steps and mold shapes for the factory. So it's like all these things happening in the background that the users don't always see, but it's for factory production planning and analysis and design. Everything is happening in the background. So that's quite exciting, and it's starting to flow quite well at this stage, which is nice.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So that's one of the biggest projects that I'm working on. It's just like a long ongoing thing. So it's not like a project that like a building that's being built. It's more like a development thing in the background. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I mean, this sounds like my dream too. I mean, I've built like these kinds of analysis systems. Basically, you get your manufacturing documents, your dimensions, drawings, everything you need for engineering analysis. You get your 3D model. Like this, I try to tell people that 3D is like the hub, and then this starts to touch every other area of your business, whether that's like visualization for marketing, whether that's manufacturing, pricing, any like data that comes from the 3D, documentation downstream. It's all like really fascinating. Like these are the kinds of projects that I like working on too.
Yeah, and all the like metadata from all the calculation and stuff is being stored on the object in the Tekla model and can then be passed on to the IFC model. So all these, like stuff that you normally don't add, we can now just automatically add to the object.
Yeah.
And the client can check that if they want to, or if someone needs like, oh, how much, do we need loads for these, or like points or whatever. It's all in the model. It's all there. All the data is always in the model, and it's automatic. So it's pretty nifty. And we can get stuff like when they lift them on site, like erection phase.
Oh yeah.
And get like the lengths of each of the lifting wires, so they can preset that before they pick up the stairs.
Yeah.
Or we can optimize the placement of like the terrazzo steps, for example. Like so when they cast them in a form, I can run open nest.
Oh yeah.
And optimize the placement of them so you can get that as good as possible. So they don't have to think about that. And the form work is being laser cut, so they get DWG files.
Yeah.
So it's like all these trickle down synergy effects that we can apply, since this company like does everything from engineering to production to erection.
Yeah, it's so fun. Like when they have such a big problem, and you're like, oh, I can solve that one too. Oh, like what if we connect this to that?
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a good fun project. That's for sure.
Oh, good. Is there still like things to do, things to bite off? new territory to explore.
Yes, yeah, it just keeps growing, which is good.
Yeah.
And for them, they're saving so much time, and everything is more streamlined, so the drawings look more the same every time. It's not like an artwork from this user to that user.
Yeah.
It's like it's more streamlined, so the guys in the factory, the guys on site, they recognize it's the same every time, so it's easy for them to interpret drawings instead of being someone's OCD, like I need to have it always look like this, or
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when the less you rely on people and the less you rely on quote unquote tribal knowledge, and the more you can lean on the system itself, then that's when you
Yeah.
can start to have these huge productivity gains, and like you can really start to trust the automation.
And the people can, or the users can focus on different problems. So like spending time on talking to the clients instead,
Mm-hmm.
solving problems for the clients instead of like doing all these repetitive tasks in the background.
Yeah. The company you're consulting with, would you say that they're because a lot of times these automations, they give these companies more capacity and they have like a design team, right? And now this design team can do more and focus on different problems. And then that also creates the possibility to take on more work. So it's really nice to work on companies that are growing so that their design team can handle more and more without necessarily having to scale their people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Do more with the same amount of resources.
Exactly.
Just be more efficient. Because it is a bit scary when we come along and try to automate things, and the users sit there like, what am I going to do?
Exactly.
When you can just do other stuff that actually add value to your clients.
Yeah.
Instead of like, I'm going to be made redundant. No. You can add value somewhere else that no one else is doing, So there's always room to this. You need to have the different perspective.
Yeah. I think so. I haven't consulted for a company where people are made redundant. It's just that they can either take on more or they take on different tasks.
That's clear.
Or the company's able to grow with the same, resources.
Yeah.
And so that's always the ideal situation and the situation that happens wherever I look. So, and it's good to see.
Yeah, I agree.
I was going to talk about AI, but I don't know if I want to. Because this is the same problem with AI is because like people say AI is going to make jobs obsolete, but I think that if you can leverage it, then I think that, rising tide lifts everyone and that more capacity is always good. But I think that's controversial.
But I also think, AI is probably still quite far away for us in the construction space.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be developed for other areas. I think we're going to be a trickle down on that. Because the construction industry is so far behind everything else. So we're going to be last on that boat too, I think. So we still have a fair amount of time before we get, but yeah, even if we get that far with it. So
yeah, we're still catching up to BIM, which was a 2000s invention.
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah. I think it's going to be the same thing. Yeah.
yeah. I just
Sure.
it's hard for me to wrap my head around why adoption is so slow sometimes with these new technologies.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
I guess it's nice because the people I've worked with have always been forward thinking and they're always looking for a new way to do things. Otherwise, they wouldn't talk to me, right? So have you had that experience where people are willing to try something else, adopt new technologies and new processes?
I think sometimes, or like most of the times, they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
They're just like, I know there's a better way of doing things.
Yeah.
They don't exactly know what they want, and I think that's up to us, sort of. Well, I found, at least for myself, I don't have to be the best programmer. I don't need to be the best guy, like with my Grasshopper skills. My main strength, I think, is to like understand what the client think he needs, and then actually identifying what they need, and then presenting that to them, and then saying like, okay, now we automate this.
I want to ask you a little bit more about, running your company. What kind of challenges did you come up against that you didn't expect to come up against whenever you did this?
Yeah, I think in the beginning I stressed a lot about like work coming in, and I was looking ahead too much. That sort of always sorted itself out, so I'm not stressing about that anymore. And now I'm trying to take advantage of when I don't have work. I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna take some time off, because that's usually the problem these days.
Yeah.
Because I have a tendency to say yes to everything. So there's usually more on than I need, I guess. What other challenges? Yeah, like someone to bounce ideas off, because I'm on my own. So that's where I found I have a few connections where we have different skill sets, so we always bounce ideas off each other. So I have a few of those in different sort of fields, which can be good, because it's easy to get stuck in your own ways. If that your own ways is a bad way, then it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So like we were talking about before, LinkedIn can help in those things, or a McNeil forum. You get people chiming in and like, oh, I'm actually on the wrong path here. So that could be a thing when you're sitting by yourself.
Yeah, that's nice to know. Are you someone who likes to work through things before asking for help?
I usually realize pretty fast if I'm like stuck in something where I'm like, oh, it's an easy. I know it's an easy like solution, but my skill set doesn't, so I just need a pointer somewhere. So I ask someone and it's like, oh, you should look at this. I still try to solve the problem myself, but at least I get a pointer in which direction to look at.
Yeah.
That's usually my take on those things, because then I again learn from trial by doing,
Yeah. I think one of my flaws is trying to reinvent the wheel, like trying to solve problems that have already been solved instead of looking for the solutions that exist. So
you're a bit stubborn, you mean?
yeah, I don't know. I think sometimes
That can be a good thing.
Yeah, I really like this analogy of the forest and the trees, right? Like when you're down in the forest, all you see are the trees, and you're like, oh well, if Rhino could solve this problem, because Rhino's what I know and that's like the tool I have. But really, I should take a flight and I should look at the forest and see the world of design technology. Should I be looking at SolidWorks? Should I be looking at Revit, ArchiCAD? Should I approach this differently? Is it even worth solving? So it's like sometimes zooming out is the part that
that helicopter view is important for sure.
Yeah,
and looking it's just taking a step back. It's like looking at your whole thing. Like, this is my workflow. Is that a good way to approach it? Yeah, so when I solve problems before I even start throwing things on the canvas, so to speak, I just like to think about the whole thing in my head and just like visualize it. Like, okay, that's probably how one way of solving it is different ways. So before I start, doing stuff on the computer, I try to visualize the whole workflow in concept way from that helicopter perspective.
Yeah,
like you're talking about.
I think that's good. It's like a pre-project, trying to see if everything makes sense, if this is a good route to go down.
And especially if I get stuck on something as well, I'm like, is this really the best way of doing it? Like, I think I can find a solution here, but it seems very complicated for what it is.
Exactly.
Surely I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah,
that happens a lot when they really appreciate it. I think that's what drives me, seeing that I've helped people and they're like, oh my God, you saved me. This task took usually it's like 4 hours. Now it's 2 minutes. And they had to do that task 20 times, like whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like, and they're like, oh, there's so much gratitude because they don't have to focus all their energy at these monotone tasks all the time. It's
the gratitude.
Yeah, the appreciation. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I'm sensing a theme with that because I mean I feel the same way, and I feel like a couple people who have talked to also are kind of driven by that same like um gratitude, kind of like appreciation. I definitely am. So it's nice to hear it sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Like I can see it when you see like the joy in their face. I'm like when they get it, and like when they get how much time they're gonna save, like oh my god, this has made my day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice feeling at the end of the
Yeah.
project when they're like, oh my god, now I get it.
Yeah. Does does that come through for you in remote work? Because, we can get lost in projects for weeks at a time and not talk to people. So do you get enough of that feedback, FaceTime, for you to feel good about the work you're doing?
Yeah, at the end of the day, like when I present, when they come back and test it, when we do some like testing and feedback and bug fixing or whatever, I always try to like put things in perspective because sometimes my client, like they can only focus on the bad things, and then like again zoom out a bit. It's like, how long did this take you before, and how long is it taking now? They're like, oh yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe these it's 98% improvement or something, like something silly,
Yeah.
and then they still look at these two bugs that we're dealing with, but we'll get there.
Yeah, yeah. It's all a process. The work never really stops. I think you can always find a new problem to solve.
Yeah, for sure.
So, kind of rewinding your career a bit, I saw that you had a few different roles. You were a structural engineer. You managed a team. You also were involved with drones for a little while, in photography. Is that right?
Yeah, that was just this like side business when when drones became a thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, I want a drone. I just don't want the small drone. I want this big drone like just came out. So me and a friend, we were like, how can we buy this drone? But let's start a business.
Yeah.
And so we started a business and bought the drone. I think it was like the DJI Inspire 2 or something
Okay.
when that first came out. And then yeah, we just approached some companies and sold some like time lapses and stuff because that was just in the beginning of construction sites.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but what we did, we took that into, I think, Cinema 3D and overlaid like the IFC models into the videos,
Okay.
and then could do like erection sequences and stuff in there and overlaid some drawings. So it's more like commercial stuff we did, like to promoting the company's skills, I guess.
Oh, so it was for their marketing. So they would have like videos with.
Yeah, marketing. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. Okay. I was thinking maybe this was for like their like project planning or to see like a 4D model, but this is more like showing off like this is our company, right?
It's like a marketing for a project or marketing for what they've done, and then they can post this on their social medias.
Oh.
It was like new. It was like there's not many people with drones, and then the skill set of having, okay, we can take your 3D model IFC, which was both of us were very familiar with, and then we just learned how to use Cinema 3D
Mhm.
or 4D, Cinema 4D, I think it's called, yeah, and then stitch that into like a
Mhm.
video.
Oh, that's super. Yeah.
Yeah, that was not too hard, but yeah. So it all started with I want to fly drone because that sounds cool.
Yeah, so it sounds like a fun time, and like you just did it because it was like you were following your interests, which I always think is a good move.
Yeah, but it was only like for a year or two,
A year or two
and
is a
that was
while. Yeah.
yeah, but that was on the side of my normal job.
Okay.
So we just did it as a hobby on the side, but we paid for the drone and a bit more, so
So have you always kind of had this entrepreneurial mindset, like you want to start companies, or is it more like you're just following your interests?
I think it's more like following my interest. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's more like that rather than being entrepreneurial. It just happens to be go in that direction.
Yeah.
So like, oh, we'll figure it out.
Yeah. working in your own company, you basically have the freedom to, take on the clients you want and solve the problems you want. Um, so it makes sense that, if that this is where you end up if you're following your interests, because you get more time to do what you want to do.
For sure. Speaking about drones, I feel like and drones and construction. I feel like there's more to do there. I'm not sure. I still want to integrate drones in my business somehow.
That'd be amazing.
I haven't figured out how yet, but I feel like that's something I want to explore at some point, because the drones are getting smarter and smarter, and then how can we? Yeah, I just need to find the right opportunity there.
Yeah. I know that there's some work building digital twins where like you have an existing structure and you're doing like a renovation. So they go and fly the drone to get like 3D point cloud data and basically reconstruct the building in a 3D program, which I've always been interested in because it seems like there's a lot of computational type of work to do in that like interchange between the point cloud to your 3D model, and then from the 3D model to a BIM model. And then what you can do, can do from that. Yeah.
Yeah, the photogrammetry stuff is very interesting.
Yeah.
And coming from like, Trimble background, I was working as a Trimble reseller. Then we had all the drones and stuff in the office and all of this stuff. But yeah, it's there's something there, and there's always a niche where people haven't been yet. So
yeah,
if I see that opportunity, you're probably gonna see me with a drone again.
That's cool. I mean, just keeping your eyes out if there's a problem you can solve with a drone. Sounds like you'll jump on that.
Yeah, hopefully.
What do you think of 4D modeling, where like you have a 3D model, but then you basically involve the time element, so you see what comes up at what time to plan for construction?
Yeah, I think it's always been a thing, but that no one's ever spent the time, because it always required to adding manually a lot of data, like adding times and things to your models. There's definitely a economical benefit for it, but not and everyone is willing to pay for it. So maybe we can automate a bit more there with like the scripting side of things. To add the dates and what have you onto the models, and you can get some nice visuals. And I think there's been a lag of the people on sites have not been very tech savvy until, lately. There's been a generational thing there. No. When I started, they barely had like mobile phones on site. That's what I felt like. It's just this very old generation of erection crews that didn't want to touch an iPad or anything like that. But these days, it's getting much easier.
Yeah,
but it's again, finding a cost-efficient way of implementing all the data into the model, and then a use case for them to use that on, if it's on site or if it's for planning, whatever purposes. I have done a fair bit of that and integrating with the what's it called, the Microsoft planner tool. Microsoft Project.
Yeah.
So you link the stuff in the project to the actual 3D model.
I did just a little bit of that in school. And you do like the Gantt charts and so like you said, there might be opportunity to like attach time data, like it takes X amount of time to erect this kind of BIM element. I mean, I'm not in that world, and I feel like construction people would get mad at me for trying, because they're like, you've never been on a site. How could you tell us what to do? I'm like, okay. I see.
But there's a lot of money to be made for the construction companies, that's for sure. But it's more like finding a best way of utilizing it, and all the construction companies work differently, so it's not a one-stop shop solution. That's the problem as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of AR VR stuff happening right now, and I imagine if you hook that up to a 4D model, that you can see what should be happening today in 3D space if you point like an iPhone camera at it or something.
Yeah.
I wonder
which is sort of, there's already solutions for that
Yeah, I
out
bet.
there. So like Trimble Connect, you can view on your phone, and you can do the AR stuff and like slide the transparency of the model, and you can also do a timeline thing.
Oh, that's cool.
So,
Yeah, I haven't had too
but
much
yes, you
exposure
can
to
add.
that.
Yeah. There's definitely there's opportunities everywhere. It's more like finding someone that wants to take advantage of it, and then
Yeah. So
finding the solution for them.
as far as your practice right now, it seems like you've built connections through your career, and that people are kind of coming to you with their problems. Has that been like a steady source of business for you? And how are you enjoying like that dynamic?
I think most of my inflow of requests are through referrals.
Mm-hmm.
Although some are just random. Someone's Googled something and found me from a forum or a YouTube video or something as well. Although I don't have many of them, but somehow people find them. But mostly it's referrals, and I think that's the way. That's the best way, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like construction industry is such a small industry. People move around and change places and talk to each other. So, yeah, that seems to be working well for me, which is good. And then I've done some webinars and things like that as well, which is good for exposure. Podcasts, maybe.
Yeah. There you go. Maybe someone will watch this and give you a ring.
Yeah, I think having been in the industry before, making a lot of connections, and then also having been on the like software resale side, where I went out and presented to all these companies like all over Australia, like that definitely helped big time. So
Yeah.
sort of cheating a bit.
Oh, that's good. I mean, it all set you up to where you are now.
Yeah.
So between management, software reselling, drone videography work, and the work you're doing now, what has been your like favorite phase? And is there one that you would go back to if you had the chance?
I think my favorite is what I'm doing at the moment.
That's great.
Solving problems and finding solutions that people don't think were possible in our space. Because I think, especially in the Tekla space, Grasshopper is still fairly new to people, and they have this view of what can be automated, and then all of a sudden you introduce Grasshopper, and it's like, what can be automated is now this. I'm like, oh my God, we never thought about that before.
Yeah.
You can actually do all these things. So it's more like expanding the views of those people. Like, okay, this is now possible instead of like this.
Yeah, and that's the hard part because, all these people with all these problems that they either haven't even identified as problems because they're just like, well, this is what it takes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
You only know what you know.
exactly. So that's why, the connection is the hard part to make. But I'm glad it's working out for you. It's just talking to as many people as you can, figuring out what their problems are, explaining how you can help. I think that's a good approach.
Yeah, and then also stepping outside your comfort zone, I guess.
Yeah.
Say yes to everything.
Yeah, that's great.
And then just solve it.
Yeah. Say yes to problems and figure it out later. I love that approach because you just have to bet on yourself because you have to know that you're capable of solving this genre of problem for these kinds of people. Like what exists and what you can reach for. So I think it's a great way to keep learning and to, expand your expertise.
And then even if it feels scary saying yes to that question, you go back and look at all the problems you had in the past. You probably solved 99% of them anyway.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you solve the next one?
Exactly. It's just like
it just seems like I don't know the solution or where to go with this now, but it'll be all right.
I know that motto also led you to say yes to this podcast. So obviously I appreciate it. And I'm glad you decided to join.
I feel like a lot of people, when they first start up, like, I need a website. It's like, what for? What do you need a website for?
Yeah.
Just make sure you have an email address and, a LinkedIn profile. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. I mean,
you don't need a website these days unless you really want to showcase something, but you can showcase that in other spaces. like unnecessary work you need to, or like a business card. People are so focused about business cards, and when they first start up. Anyway, my rant.
I think it's procrastination because everyone wants to like get everything right in its place before you start to do anything. But yeah, it's like starting up isn't that hard. You just have to let people know what you do in one way or another, whether that's YouTube, LinkedIn, business cards, door to door, calling, whatever. Email is probably, the bare minimum of what you need for people to get in touch with you, but it doesn't take much.
Yeah, that doesn't need to be a cost barrier. Everything should pretty much be free. You can use what's free and available. That's for sure.
So what are your ambitions for your company moving forward? Do you just kind of want to do what you're doing, or is there anything that you have your eyes on?
I have this dilemma, I guess, where I have too much work for me to take on more, and I could probably take on more. But then do I want to hire someone and then end up where I was before, just managing people, which is not something I really like enjoy. And then also what I'm selling is my skill set and my experience. How can I then teach that to someone? It's really like a tricky situation. So I haven't quite made up my mind if I should take on someone else, and then I don't have an answer to that yet. It's quite comfortable as it is now.
Yeah, that's
and it's fun. So it's like I don't feel like I need to grow, but it would be nice. But then I also need to manage people and expectations, and that takes away from the things that are good now, which is flexibility. And I don't have to answer to anyone. I don't have to make sure I have enough jobs coming in to provide someone's salary and all of that. So
yeah, I mean, obviously there's no reason to mess up something that's working for your like lifestyle and everything. Like if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But I feel like some of those problems have solutions. Like as far as like paying someone's salary, you could hire someone on part-time and only give them work as needed, like on an hourly basis, with the understanding that it fluctuates. So I'm only giving you my overloaded work. One other strategy I've heard people use, and something I'm doing now, is basically testing little bits with different people. So you have a small problem with a very defined scope. You contact someone and, can you solve this for me? You don't even mention like long-term arrangement or anything, and then you just see how they do, and you compensate them. And then now you have like an idea, all right, what they're good at. Are they good? Do I want to work with them again? Should I talk to someone else? So it's like building a Rolodex of people you can work with. I don't know. I mean, all this is theory for me. I'm steps behind you, but I mean, I've thought about, what would I do in this scenario? I've come across this with video editors. So sorry to my video editor. I might cut this out before I hand it over, but it's like, I'm trying to give these like short videos to different people to see like what style I like. Who do I have to manage less? Because the ideal scenario is no revisions. Like I give it to someone and they knock it out of the park. So it's like, I don't want to manage a video editor. So I'm like, if there's
that's exactly the problem I'm having.
Yeah.
And also like take that video editing problem, but apply it to your FA problem. Like
that's a whole
piece. And then also you do it in a specific way. You have your standards. You need to find someone that sort of does it to your standards. But also at the end of the day, maybe that doesn't matter. Maybe if it's slightly lower standards, does it matter?
Yeah, that's true.
All these things, I'm not sure. And if it takes up more of your joy for what you do, that's what I'm afraid of. Like I'm really enjoying it, what I do, and I don't have to do all these things that I don't enjoy. So yeah, that's the dilemma. That's for sure.
Yeah, I understand that dilemma, and I don't think there's a right answer. There's only a right answer for you. So I'm interested to
Yeah.
hear what you come up with.
Yep. I'll keep you posted.
Okay, sounds good. Would you be happy if you were able to sustain this pace doing this work for the foreseeable or infinite future? Like, or are you the type of person who's going to need to try something new eventually?
I think I want to try and create some off the shelf solutions and have like that cell in the background as well. And there's a few ideas I have there, but it just requires me to spend some time on that, which I don't have at the moment. So catch 22. Um, but yeah, then I can go on holiday and still have things ticking around in the background, but it also requires maintenance and what have you. So
Yeah.
yeah, off the shelf solutions is something I'm looking at. And I'm not talking about training or anything. There's plenty of people really good at that and doing that in this space anyway. So
Software
it's
plugin?
more specific to yeah, I don't want to say too much.
All right, that sounds good. Yeah, off the shelf tools. It's not it is passive income in a sense because you can take time off and then that will keep working for you while you're off. And I think that's a great way to build out. I mean, I've had like ideas for plugins, but the upfront cost is like the time cost is pretty high, and then you don't know if it'll take. So I feel like it's in my future too to build something that people can just purchase, but
Yeah.
I haven't gotten that far yet. But I think that's really good. It seems like you have a couple directions you can go at this point.
I do definitely have this one idea which I want to, see through at some point. But at the moment, I just feel like I don't have time. Again, catch 22.
Yeah.
But there will be slower times. There's, it usually goes a bit like this, and then I definitely have time. I just have to set aside time for it to make that happen. And it will involve Shape Diver, I think.
Oh, that's exciting.
So that's why I mentioned that before as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those web tools are exciting. And well, all right, Oscar, thanks for the time. Really enjoyed the conversation, and I learned a lot talking to you just about computational design, your journey, what it's like, running your own business and managing the projects you're managing. So I really appreciate it. Thanks for saying yes, and thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for asking me to be a part of this. It was a good conversation.
How about we end on a question? Is there any advice that you'd give to someone who is thinking of starting their own consulting business like you have set up, where they help people solve their problems through like computational design? Because I've talked to a few people who are thinking about like tiptoeing in, but they haven't quite made up their mind, or they're like kind of afraid of what if it's going to work out, or if this is what like the right path. So is there any advice you have?
I guess if you can start lining up a client, that would be the goal thing. That takes away a bit of the fear of stepping into the unknown, but otherwise just, embrace the unknown and just say yes.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. I think that's a good way to wrap it up. Having a client before you jump is definitely a good way to make sure that you're not gonna fail right away. So, so I think that's good advice. I did the same thing.
At least I guess we don't have many outlays. We just have like a computer and then some software costs, I guess. So
Yeah,
it's not super scary.
you don't need maybe some other costs that other businesses would have. You're just selling your expertise and your consulting. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, sounds great. Well, thanks for ending it on that note.